Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the Black and White Pod. I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt.
And we're going to do things a little bit differently in this episode. We're actually going to be splitting up our 3 topics into 3 different episode parts. So episode 2 will end up being 3 parts released separately. While we try this thing out, we're going to try a few different topics and a few different ways of recording, and we're going to kind of see what fits and what works best for us and for everyone that listens or watches. So without further ado, this week's topic is one I'm really excited about. We're talking about Saga, the comic from Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, published by Image Comics. It is literally my favorite comic being printed right now. I absolutely love it. I've got my Saga comics behind me here and a couple action figures. I couldn't fit anything else there. So that was
props.
Yeah, I learned after last week's episode, you got to show up with props, I guess. So I got props this time. So the 3 topics we're going to cover. First, this episode, we're talking about why Saga is important. We'll talk a little bit about that, kind of go into some detail on just why should you care about this comic. And maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't. These are just 2 guys' opinions, but we might not even agree. Who knows? Next week, we'll talk about our top 5 moments from the first 54 issues. We've both just completed a reread of the first 54, so it's kind of fresh in our minds, and we want to talk about what excited us, what we liked the most, whatever the most impactful things that happened.
Reread, bro. That's just a read for me. That's my first time through.
You didn't have to sell yourself out like that. I wasn't going to do that to you, but I appreciate the honesty. And
Always.
Then in the third part of this episode, we're going to review issue number 55. There will be spoilers because by the time this thing actually comes out, it's going to be well after issue 55 is at the stand. So if you haven't read it by then, I don't know, that's your problem, not ours. And then we'll also talk about, what we're excited about for the last 54 issues. So we'll go into some what we want to seize, that type of stuff. So, all that being said, the topic of this part of episode 2, why is this important? Why should you care about Saga? I've been doing a lot of talking. Matt, go ahead. You kick us off with this one.
Okay. I'm a little parched right now, so I'm going to crack a little beverage right here.
Bro, you ain't even said anything yet.
This is a beer from upstate New York, and the reason I'm drinking this, and it's not a quality beer. This is a Genesee Light for anyone, brewed in Rochester for anyone from this area. But I'm gonna say Saga,
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize this was a 21 and over podcast. I'm so glad we're on it.
It's real late.
Adults. This is an adult comic.
It's real late for me, so yeah, this is a 21 and over podcast, but. I cracked that beer in the spirit of upstate New York because much like a quarterback that was drafted from Wyoming, Saga gets better and better year after year, issue after issue you read it. Saga, in my opinion, is ultimately a story about family. The series is about family, and whether you consider that Dave, we're going to go into some kind of spill. I'm going to try to keep it as vague as I can and not go into like full spoilers on everything. But
I mean, okay.
There's been a 3-year hiatus.
Issue 54 came out 3 years ago.
Okay.
If you haven't read it by now, you might not be planning on it. So
okay.
And if you're listening to this, you probably already like Saga. So
true. So the 2 parental figures, Marco and Alana, sorry. It's obviously about them and their daughter Hazel, and it's narrated from Hazel's perspective, which I think is really cool. And it's ultimately about like their family. But much like I consider Dave like a brother to me, and he is family to me. Also, those people that are not your blood relatives, people that it's about that story of family. I mean, that's to just distill it down in the simplest of way for me. I mean, it is Star Wars, which I love, mixed with a little bit of Romeo and Juliet. I've on Wikipedia and some other places, they said more Game of Thrones, which I can see a little bit of that. But honestly, for me, it's more
I've
like
never
Star
watched
Wars.
Game of Thrones.
Okay. So
Can't relate.
It's to me, it's more Romeo and Juliet and Star Wars and all kinds of just weird aliens and stuff mixed in there.
I fully agree with that. That's kind of one of the ways that I used to pitch this comic to people that weren't reading it yet. I would be like, if you like Star Wars, This is like Star Wars, but told through the eyes of, two young people in love that weren't supposed to be.
And
That
just
was my
like,
that was my elevator pitch to people.
yeah, no, and I think that's a good pitch. Like, I think also like in comics today, and we can all have our different opinions and whatever, but there's a lot of push for diversity and inclusion and race and sexuality and gender and all that good stuff. And at times I feel things are a little bit more ham-fisted and heavy-handed. But with Saga, you get all that, but it's done well. It's done organically. It doesn't seem forced.
I love that you're saying this.
And that's just, I don't want to come across as that guy because like that's been in the news a lot in the comic industry, but Saga does it well, and it did it very well in my opinion. And honestly, I bought this trade a long time ago. I'm holding up the Saga volume.
Man's got more trade. Props. More props.
You got more than me this episode, but I bought that trade a while ago, like when the kind of first came out, and I read it. I read like the first issue, and like I was not feeling it whatsoever. And Dave definitely had some influence, and he's like, "Yeah, man, like you need to read Saga. You need to read Saga." And this past summer, I started reading it, and I think that I was like in the mindset to actually receive it now.
What's changed since then?
Well, for me,
I know the answer, but I want you to say it.
I mean, definitely having a family. I'm married, and that I think that really helped me receive this more. It also doesn't hurt that my daughter's name is very close to the female main character. Like,
you already said it. We already said it wrong once.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that really hit home with me, and it's honestly there's just like wacky things like in the first. It really is jarring in the first couple issues. Like I've never seen really that much sex in a comic like that portrayed that way, and the violence, and seeing it, I just was not ready to receive it. But I really think after you read like the first two issues, you're hooked. I was definitely hooked after the first issue this time, but if you finish that first trade, I don't see how you're not going to be hooked on this series. And like I said, it only gets better after that. And I can confidently say today, this is on like probably my top 5 all-time comic book ongoing series for sure. And it ain't 3, 4, or 5. I can tell you that. It's up there. So that's my opening salvo, I guess.
Your opening salvo. Well, you say salvo like we're not going to agree here, but I think we're actually we're going to say a lot of the same things. So, I chose the words of this section carefully. I said why it's important, not why I love it, not why you love it, not why anybody should love it, but I think this is truly an important comic, and that goes back to what you're saying about the inclusivity of this comic. And I think that Brian K. Vaughan does it better than probably anybody ever has. And that's probably a bit of a statement from a place of ignorance, because I don't think that I've read enough comics to confidently state that. But as far as the comics that I personally have read, I don't think anything does LGBTQIA plus inclusivity and treatment better than this comic. And that's from like a representation standpoint. The way that all of those different characters are portrayed and respected, I think is the most important part. Is really, really important, especially in a comic that is so popular and can be so influential. And I think that BKV probably understands that too and respects that as well. So I think that's like, to me, that is one of the most important things about this comic. I'm sorry, I need to look at some of the notes that I wrote down. Go ahead.
No, and I think this is like, don't get me wrong. There's definitely racist people and bigoted people and all that stuff. Like there definitely is. But I think Saga, like you said, why it's important, like Saga is the template of how to do this properly. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of pushback in the comic community because a lot of this stuff isn't done properly and it's not done organically. And I don't want to stick up for those people. Like,
yeah, well, I was just going to say, I think a lot of the people that feel that way are probably the problem. Not that the things that they're complaining about aren't the problem. They're the problem, in my opinion.
And I have a differing opinion, and that's why this is great. So, but go on. I did not mean to stop you.
No, you're good. You're good. So beyond that, I think that is, like from an importance standpoint, I think that's the lead thing there. But it's important to me because it kind of filled a hole in my comics life when Invincible ended.
Yep.
Saga was there to like kind of fill the void left in my heart from that comic, because I love Invincible so much. And this, even though it's like a totally different type of comic, it's not a superhero comic. It still has some of the same sort of feel that Invincible has. And, I'm sure at some point we'll do some episodes about Invincible, but Invincible is also a comic about family. It's about family, and it's about growing up, and the backdrop just happens to be a really robust and fun superhero universe to play around in. And Saga is kind of that same thing, but it's more about, I think it's more about love and family and relationships, set across the backdrop of an absolute batshit insane sci-fi universe setting, which I just absolutely love. It's such a fun comic to read. And there's also a lot of fun in the way that BKV interacts with the fans. The letters column in Saga is really great because he reads and responds to letters. He accepts like regular like snail mail letters. Like you don't just send an email to Brian K. Vaughan to get in the letters page of Saga. He's got his annual survey. I don't know if it's annual. I think it might be like biannual. It's not regular, but I don't know if you've ever read the survey. Probably not, because you were reading it like in collected edition. So in the single issues, I'm sure you'll see it at some point, but he does this really interesting survey where he surveys the readers and kind of just shares like interesting facts about, what the survey uncovered. And I can't get into detail on it because it's been so long since I've read one of the surveys. I honestly don't remember. I just remember they're really entertaining. And I think it's a really fun way to interact with your fans. Their unwillingness to sacrifice the quality of this comic. I think it was one of the first comics to do the 6 on, 3 off publishing cadence. That was done for a very specific reason, to make sure that Fiona could do every single issue of this comic. They needed the time to prepare an arc, make sure everything is ready to go, that the art is done, that it's shipping on time. I can't remember a time where Saga was ever so late that I was shaking my fist in the air, angry at the creators, like I was so many times at Robert Kirkman over the years with Invincible. This comic just doesn't suffer from that. And it's that unwillingness to sacrifice quality that I think is kind of, it helps respect the book more for me. And then I think the last thing, actually, no, that's not the last thing. I have 2 more things. You mentioned it. The way that there's a lot of sex in Saga, but it's not done in a cheap way. It's not done just for the sake of, showing a dick. There's usually, some sort of story-driven purpose for it to be in there, and it's treated respectfully. It's usually pretty fun or funny. There's a lot of like really great sex moments in the book, which sounds kind of ridiculous to say, someone that maybe isn't familiar with the comic, but that's one of the things that I love about it. I think it's a really fun representation of sex in comics. I don't think you get that very often.
Yeah, and I know we're like 21 and over, the 21 and over adult crowd here. So
only when you crack a beer.
Yeah,
the pod.
I 100% agree with that. I feel like this comic has some of the most realistic portrayals of sex, like of how it actually is. And I think that some of the sexual interactions that are had in this book, we've all had them, like in funny ways and things like that. Like we've all had them, whether you want to own up to it or not. That's what it is. But I think just through those encounters as well too, like this book is just like, when I was reading it this time through, I just couldn't understand how relatable it was to like people with giant TVs on their head and seahorse people and just like all these wacky, weird monsters. Like I said, I was not ready to receive it. But like once you actually read the story, like I was like, this is the most relatable comic book I think I've ever read. Like, it really is.
Yeah. That's another reason why it's such an important comic book, because it gets so much right in the relatability category, which, for most superhero comics, you can't relate to those characters. That's the appeal. That's why you read them, because you want to see crazy, fantastic things with characters that you love, and you just want to see like dumb superhero stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is just not that comic.
I'm going to detour you for 1 second. So you've read some other BKV stuff. Is it like
Mm-hmm.
all like that? Like, not like, obviously not like Saga, but I don't know. Is it
I mean,
relatable to this nature? Like, or
Why the Last Man is another one of my all-time favorite comics.
okay.
It's a much different comic in tone. It's not relatable like Saga is, but it wasn't written to be.
Okay. Yeah.
Why is a sci-fi disaster movie, for lack of a better comparison, and it's super well done and it's super interesting. And it got made into a TV show. They made one season of it for Hulu. It
Canceled.
got canceled. Yeah, it got canceled. Honestly, not to go way off course here, but I kind of get why it got canceled.
Yeah.
It not that it was bad. It was just not. I don't know. It didn't. It was trying to be Walking Dead in presentation and pacing, and I don't think the comic translates that way to TV.
Gotcha.
I wasn't surprised. I didn't even finish watching the first season. And I'm notoriously loyal to shows that are even not great. I watched like 7 seasons of The Flash on CW, and like the last 3 of those were not good, but I just kept punishing myself every Tuesday.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some loyalty.
Yeah.
Loyalty.
But I started reading Paper Girls. That's another Brian K. Vaughan comic. Yeah. I really liked the first trade from Paper Girls. I thought it was fun. It's nothing like Saga.
Okay.
It's nothing like
I see the ad. That was the ads in like the digital version that I got. It had a preview for Paper Girls in the back, and I'd heard of it. I never really read it, but
yeah. This is totally off topic, but I've been playing with the windows in Zoom to like, I don't know. I'm not sure. I feel like my eyes are always pointing in the wrong direction, and I've been moving the windows around. If you're watching this on YouTube, you've seen the windows move like 2 times already for our faces. I'm so sorry if that was jarring. I can't figure out how I want to do it. I just moved them again.
You'll figure it out.
So
what's your last?
my last reason why Saga is so important. Fiona Staples.
Yes.
Without Fiona Staples doing the art for this book, it's a totally different comic. Yep. It is the best goddamn comic art I think I've ever seen, and it's so consistent. And rereading the comic so recently and reading literally all 54 issues in the span of like, I don't know, it took me maybe 6 weeks to get through it all. The art improved so much from issue 1 to issue 54. Okay. Like, absolutely insane. She's so insane.
I'm glad you said that. Like, I don't think her art in the beginning was bad, but you can
it wasn't bad at all.
It was more.
It was a little more raw.
Raw, yeah, for sure, raw. But yeah, you definitely see the refinement. I feel that no one draws realistic human emotion, especially in faces, TV faces, than Fiona Staples. Like I didn't, going back to one of your other points, I didn't know about the 6 and 3 thing. Because that's a huge thing for me. Why I drop off the series is inconsistent art. Like that will get me.
It's a killer.
I can't do it anymore. I used to be able to get through it. I can't. So I literally like X-Men. If Pepe Larraz isn't on the art, I won't even pick up the issue. I'll wait till he's back on. Like that's where I'm at now. I can't read it.
My stance on X-Men.
I'm just using that as an example. But yeah,
I know you're using it as a chance to jab at X-Men.
Yes,
I don't like it.
Yeah. No, I don't blame you.
To be clear, I love the X-Men as characters. Everything that's happened since Dawn of X and whatever. It's not for me.
We can get into Marvel on a different day.
We can. So I think we're in agreement on why Saga is important. I actually was surprised how close our two opinions were on this, but that's it. If you haven't read Saga yet, hopefully we convinced you, because you're missing out if you're not reading it. Unless you're weirded out by like sex and violence, then maybe this isn't the comic for you, because there's a healthy portion of both of those things throughout the comic.
Yeah. I'm actively trying to get my wife to read it, and I'm hoping she will take me up on it. Because, like, you know, we all try to, not that I'm trying to force things or whatever. Like, I'm not going to have my wife read Amazing Spider-Man or Captain America. You know, right. Like, that's not going to happen.
She wouldn't like it.
She wouldn't like it. But, like, because of the relatability of the comic, like, this is one of those, this is a rare gem. It really is. I sent you a video a while ago, like one dude I like on a podcast, and he was talking about, like, you know, in artistic mediums, there's a lot of crap, and then there's, you know, some just average stuff, and then there's some really good stuff, and then there's the superior stuff, and then there was Saga, people. And for those podcast listeners, Saga is way above, and I agree 100%. There really is nothing like it. I'm really happy I'm on the monthly train with this thing now. I'm glad I got caught up. So I'm picking up the single issues as it comes out now and reading it from month to month. So
when I was doing some research for this discussion, I mean, I knew, but I didn't realize like how many awards this comic won between 2013 and 2015.
That's research I did.
Eisner's, Harvey's. There's a reason why it's winning awards. It's that good. It's just that good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. That's what these two random dudes you've never met before most likely think about comic Saga and why it's important. Next week we'll talk about our top 5 moments from the first 54 issues. The things that impacted us the most, that we loved the most, that were the most important to a character or the story or the progression of the story, whatever. We each got a top 5. At some point in this podcast, we can't agree. I feel like the next episode there'll be some disagreement. There's no way we have the same top 5. There's no possible way we have the same top 5.
I don't think we do.
Well, we're gonna find out in a week. Thank you all for listening or watching if you're watching on YouTube. We'll be back in a week. Bye.